Good evening. It's 7 o'clock Central Time. I'd like to call the meeting of the Urbana City Council to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Bowersox Johnson,
Here.
Jacobson, Lewis,
Here.
Marlin,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Smythe,
Here.
Stevenson,
Present.
Mayor Pressing.
Here. First item is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, February 4th, 2013.
I make the motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by Dennis Roberts, seconded by Robert Lewis. Are there any additions or corrections?
Oh.
If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Next, additions to the agenda.
I'd like to move a change.
Okay?
I'd like to move that the unfinished business be put after all of the reports of standing committees and new business.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. We will deal with that at the end. Petitions and communications. I have Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood, who is concerned about the sewer problem in Ellis subdivision, but has no comments tonight. And we also have Bishop King James Underwood. Again, no comments, but concerned about Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problems. And we have Robin Arbiter.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Robin Arbiter. I live at 1511 Hunter Street in Urbana. And I'm here to support the mayor's nomination of James Moreland and Clyde Walker to the City of Urbana's Neighborhood Safety Task Force. The Learman Neighborhood Action Committee, of which I am a participant, appreciates the mayor's creation of this task force and credits you with seeking representation from our neighborhood on it since the beginning. The Neighborhood Safety Task Force is an example of multi-lens focus on a problem, in this case crime. And it speaks to the kind of problem solving that involves all the stakeholders in the solutions. Renters, landlords, homeowners from across Urbana, along with the police department, the mayor's office, and many of the city's departments from community development to public works. LNAC is pleased to support the mayor's nomination of Mr. Moreland and Mr. Walker to the task force. They both bring useful experience and heartfelt commitment to the issues. Mr. Walker has been a longtime community advocate in housing issues, and he has a special concern for the experiences of young people in the neighborhood. And Mr. Moreland, in addition to other skills, brings an extremely high level of care for his neighbors and was recruited to LNAC because of this. He regularly visits the Champaign County Nursing Home to bring comfort to residents there, and when weather permits, he makes a weekly prayer walk through the Aspen Court Apartments, which is much appreciated. They are both very thoughtful, good neighbors in the Learman neighborhood, and I believe you'll find them to be thoughtful and good neighbors in the larger Urbana community to which we all belong. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for all your organizing so that there is a Learman Neighborhood Action Committee. So that's great.
Mayor?
Yes,
Yeah,
Charlie.
I was going to say very much similar sort of thing, but in addition to that, I think it shows the power of a neighborhood association. It's really very useful to City Council to have neighborhood associations help channel and funnel ideas and problems to the council. You know, we have a number of other neighborhood associations, and they have their mailing lists and equally effective when problems come up. So I think it's a testimony. You know, the success of the Learman Action Committee, it's a testament to how well neighborhood associations can work. So thank you.
I would just want to add that, you know, our commitment as an association is to address every problem by building on the strengths of the people in the neighborhood. And it's exciting to have opportunities for people in the neighborhood to represent the neighborhood and to speak for themselves and their neighbors. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I?
Dennis.
Yes, and this isn't so much for Robin, but I've observed that in the city council room itself, we do have kind of an accessibility problem. And when the chairs are lined up evenly, it's really impossible for a wheelchair to arrive, especially if there are seats along the walls, which often there are, especially during a crowded meeting. And to approach the table and give her presentation, it was required that we take seats away from one of the walls. So I think that the seating in the city council chamber needs to be revised and looked at. And my recommendation would be to remove the rigid seating that we have now and think about a different kind of seating plan or seats that are more mobile or more useful and do not become such a hindrance to those people who have disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Brandon?
I have a different topic. Charlie, was your...
Oh, yeah, I was just going to add to what Dennis just said. If we just shift, Dennis had shifted the seats last week and it worked. And if you shift the main seats over a foot in one direction, you create an aisle even with seats, even with the portable seats on against the wall on each side. So if we just leave it like that until we have a more permanent solution,
Right.
that would work.
But what we found was that in the time since the last meeting, when I did ask the custodial staff or the people who came in after our council meeting to help me move the seats 6 inches so that there was no problem with accessibility, since then, the seats have been moved back.
Yeah.
So that's not a final solution, but it is a temporary one.
Okay. Brandon?
I had a different quick item under communication, just so that council members are aware and any of the public watching at home. This week I got another one of those mailings that Mike Munson's probably really familiar with from Direct Energy. One of these mailings that I assume goes out to everybody who buys electricity, has electricity service in their home, saying I could sign up and save 5%, and then they clarify that that's 5% savings compared to Ameren's default price for electricity, and that's only really valid through May. Anyway, I think when you read between the lines, you see that once again, the city of Urbana, the pool, as long as people didn't opt out, the kind of bulk buying pool that we're all in by default already saved us way more than 5%. So for people who get these kind of mailings, it looks like there's another round of them happening. You can ignore some of those mailings from private companies if you'd rather just stay in the bulk pool that the city's already negotiated to save us much more on our electric bill. So I know there's probably still, Mike, an FAQ on the city website where people could read about how that had all worked and what the opt-in and opt-out rules are. Is that right?
They might have to go a page or two in there, but yeah, we have FAQs and we have an aggregation page. I think if you go on the residents tab, you'll see on the left-hand column there's a municipal electric aggregation page. And while we're on the topic, I think we are going to have our second quarterly report, aggregation report next week. And hopefully I think we're going to have some home field people here to talk to us and you can ask questions too.
Oh, great.
That is kind of misleading. They're implying that you'll do better than you are right now if you're in the group, which is not true. So we should probably contact them and get it clarified that they shouldn't send this out. Because we don't have a lot of people, I don't think, that are not in our group.
Well, I think that the people don't understand the default issue. And if they
No.
don't understand the default issue, they assume that that's what they are in. So that's a problem.
Okay, thanks you for bringing that up, Brandon. Is there anyone else who would like to address the City Council? I want to welcome 2 candidates for City Council. We have Carol Ammons and Bill Brown. They're here for social services, which we moved to the end of the meeting. But you can see what it's like. Okay, reports of standing committees. Committee of the Whole.
Yes, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to move approval of Resolution Number 2013-02-003R, which is a resolution approving local agency agreement for federal participation with the Illinois Department of Transportation. This is paying for labor for signage and bike racks for the 2012 Safe Routes to School project, Section Number 12-00517-01-ST.
I'll move approval also. I'll second that.
I moved it.
Okay, motion by Diane Marlin, seconded by Dennis Roberts. Any discussion? I think we don't need a roll call on this one, do we? We do need a roll call. Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Bauer, Sox, Johnson,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe, Stevenson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Diane?
Next is resolution number 2013-02-004R. It's related to the same topic, a resolution approving a local agency agreement for federal participation with the Illinois Department of Transportation, and this is for pavement markings for the 2012 Safe Routes to School project, section number 12-00517-00ST.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Marlin, seconded by Dennis Roberts. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Bauer, Sox, Johnson,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe, Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries.
I move approval of ordinance number 2013-02-011, which is an ordinance approving an agreement for use of the right-of-way with Champaign Telephone Company. This is for Green Street between Gregory Street and Lincoln Avenue, California Avenue between Vine Street and Urbana Avenue, Philo Road between Florida Avenue and Colorado Avenue, Elm Street between Race Street and Cedar, Cedar Street between Springfield and Elm, and Willow Road between the right-of-way north of Airport Road and Beeson Drive.
Second.
Okay, motion by Marlin, seconded by Stevenson. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Bauer, Sox, Johnson,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe, Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries.
The next three are related to liquor licenses. The first is ordinance number 2013-02-012, which is an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class C liquor licenses for Casey's Retail Company, DBA Casey's General Store, 3234, at 2100 East University Avenue.
Second.
Okay, motion by Marlin, second by Stevenson. Brandon?
And yeah, as last week, Charlie and I both will abstain from any discussion or voting on
We
these next
have
items
four of us.
to
Is
avoid
that
any conflict of
enough?
interest.
And does the mayor vote? Even though she's
No,
the liquor commissioner?
I don't vote because I have to enforce it, so
Oh.
So we have two.
it's your ordinance. Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Next up, I move approval of ordinance number 2013-02-013, which is ordinance amending the Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, which increases the number of Class A liquor licenses for Cochran's Office Incorporated, DBA Tin Roof Tavern, at 604 North Cunningham Avenue.
Second.
Motion by Marlin, seconded by Stevenson. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries.
I move approval of ordinance number 2013-02-014, which is an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class R2 liquor licenses for Mas Amigos Incorporated, DBA Mas Amigos Restaurant at 1106 West University Avenue.
Second.
Motion by Marlin, seconded by Stevenson. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
Any, I don't think we have any reports of special committees. Reports of officers. Mike Munson.
I'd like to give you a little update on the Urbana Landmark Hotel. XJ Wan is back in town after visiting his home in Oregon for the first time in a couple of years. He told me the hotel had full houses on Friday and Saturday. That was helped by the state wrestling tournament. His February receipts so far exceed $20,000. He's also booked for 15 weddings and other events in the Grand Ballroom, in coming weeks. His three-man maintenance crew continues, to work on the alumni tap, which he hopes to open by April 1st. New flooring in the bar is almost completely installed. He's added 2 new coolers and new beer lines for the bar. Once the bar opens, he'll also be able to offer a continental breakfast to guests. He's also working on the 3rd floor. Card locks have been installed in all the 3rd floor doors. He's hopeful to open the 3rd floor, giving him 90 rooms as soon as late May. He's also received delivery of high-efficiency heating and air conditioning units for the hotel rooms. He expects to start installing them this spring once the weather gets a little bit warmer. Once he finishes with the alumni tap, he's going to be working on updating the kitchen and the restaurant. He expects that to cost about $100,000. Another goal for this summer is to paint the hotel's exterior, to remove the rotted wood trim from the building's exterior. So things are going well. The alumni tap looks great. Progress is continually being made.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Dennis.
I just wanted to say that I walked through the hotel. Of course, the doors are open and people can walk in, and as they will. And I saw some of the improvements there. And while I was there, there was about 4 different families just standing around in awe of what they were looking at. There was one family that had 2 kind of mod punk, sort of like young-aged daughters, and they came up to the owner and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe how beautiful this is. I'm going home to bring my sister to look at this tomorrow." And so I thought, well, if you could get, about a 16 or 18-year-old young lady who has a bit of a radical look to her come in and appreciate this old building, there's something right going on. So I just thought I'd say that I was rather enthused after that visit.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports of officers? Okay, we'll move on. New business. Appointments to the Neighborhood Safety Task Force, James Moreland and Clyde Walker.
Second.
Motion by Charlie Smythe, seconded by Dennis Roberts. Any discussion? Yes, Dennis.
Yeah, I just also want to say that I think this is a great inclusion into the Safety Task Force membership. And of course, I know Clyde Walker and James Moreland pretty well. And as you know, Clyde Walker, besides his other contributions to the Learman Neighborhood Action Committee by being on the board of directors, also serves as a commissioner on the Housing Authority of Champaign County. So he's a great person to add to the crew. And James Moreland is a very dedicated man, as Robin Arbiter indicated, and I just really support them and their energy to share with the community.
Okay. Charlie.
Yeah, now that I think about it, the Neighborhood Safety Task Force has essentially become our de facto neighborhood association commission, so to speak, to the council. I think, do we have representatives from all of our neighborhoods basically on here?
All the neighborhood associations that we know of, but we encourage people who live in a neighborhood that doesn't have an association to form one.
Yeah, okay.
Diane.
Well, since everyone else is talking, I'll chime in here too, and I would just let the public know that the Neighborhood Safety Task Force has considered some of the really landmark ordinances, and I don't mean the hotel landmark, but landmark ordinances that the council has passed in the last few years, including things like the rental registration ordinance and the aggravated nuisance ordinance first got its airing in the task force, and the snow clearing ordinance came through there. So a lot of the key ordinances related to public safety obviously comes through that committee. So it's a very valuable committee.
And I might add also the hotel licensing.
Yeah.
After we had problems with the hotel management. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we have ordinance number 2013-02-015, an ordinance approving a final subdivision plat, North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park Subdivision Number 5. Okay, Robert Myers is here to explain it.
Good evening. Again, Robert Myers, Planning Manager with the City of Urbana. This is a request for approval of a final plat for North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park, subdivision number 5. Maybe I can preface this by saying North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park began in 1991. And so this is really the final piece of land in the industrial park to be final platted. So that represents about 22 years that it's taken to final plat the entire industrial park, which is pretty indicative, I would say, of industrial development. You just have to really take a long-term view because it takes a while to fill out. But this is really a success story for North Urbana, I believe. So this particular property would be comprised of 2 lots on Saline Court. And actually, North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park was first preliminary platted in 1991. That expired. Make a long story short, it was revised in 2002 in the preliminary plat. So this portion had been preliminary platted before, but what you have here tonight is a little bit different than that. So we thought as a housekeeping measure, we would go ahead and refresh the preliminary plat, which the Plan Commission has done and they have approved. And along with that, we were asking that the City Council approve this final plat. The final plat will create 2 lots, a little over 8 acres, and will allow the lots actually to be sold and exchange hands. In fact, Mac of Illinois, who is the applicant in this, they already have a potential industrial user who plans to close potentially by the end of this month. That's their interest. The property is actually, as you might have guessed, let's see here, the property is actually zoned heavy industrial. The area that's hatched is the property that we're talking about here tonight that will be final platted. So the comprehensive plan also shows heavy industrial as well. And you know, in 2005, we recognized in the comprehensive plan the future Lincoln Avenue alignment, although that's now been revised. And so now as part of your packet, you'll see we have the benefit of a brand new realignment study or alignment study for North Lincoln Avenue extension. And you'll notice that in the lower left-hand corner of this illustration, you'll see that North Lincoln Avenue would extend all along basically the eastern property line. One of the reasons we wanted to revise the preliminary plat and get it in this final plat is to show and reflect that new alignment for North Lincoln Avenue Industrial Park. So that's one of the reasons that the final plat differs just slightly from the preliminary plat. I would add that Saline Court will be extended to the north property line. In fact, we already have the right-of-way now, but a bond is being posted to ensure that it will be extended as planned and as part of this plat approval. The Plan Commission at their February 7th meeting approved the preliminary plat and recommended that the City Council approve the final plat for this subdivision. And City staff likewise recommends approval.
Brandon?
Yeah, I support this. My only comment is I do agree with the Plan Commission that it's going to be worthwhile to update the comp plan's mobility connectivity chart sometime soon. Obviously not as part of tonight's vote, but I think it would help give everyone clarity to have an updated document there showing which streets might be stub streets or cul-de-sacs, or where there might be future bridges over the unnamed tributary or other features, so that it's really clear to people for future development what might be connected to what. But certainly this development and this plat I totally support, and they make sense, and the connectivity issues for this segment are all straightened out. So thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, about one of the comments that Lou Hopkins made in the Planning Commission about street connectivity. We're going to be extending Saline Court Street north to the end of the industrial park property, and he was questioning whether in the future that might want to be a connected street to into the next property as it's developed along to the north, which is oh no, I can't remember. That's the Squire property. Currently, it looks like the street in its extension is going to eliminate what used to be a cul-de-sac. Well, I guess it exists today, and it looks like the proposal that if Exhibit D, the zoning map, is accurate, it looks like the cul-de-sac is intended to be at the end of that industrial park property, and it looks like it's on private property or non-industrial park property. Can you explain that deviation and what's expected there?
Sure. The property to the north of this subdivision is called Squire Farm subdivision, and I think it was 2008 that the Plan Commission and City Council approved that one lot, 20-acre subdivision. It's a little unusual because it's a subdivision of one lot of 20 acres. But for industrial users, it's not necessarily out of the ordinary because a lot of them that require really extensive operations that take up a fair amount of land. And so one lot that's 20 acres is not necessarily unusual for an industrial user. At some point in the future, some years from now, some decades from now, I'm not really sure, that 20-acre lot could get subdivided. And at that time, I believe Saline Court could very well be extended and connected to adjoining properties as well. I wouldn't doubt that. So, but the time at which a future street would be built is if that street were ever extended, Saline Court. And so the connectivity map, as part of the comprehensive plan, that would help guide us to show what the skeletal structure should be for streets in the area, serve that area.
So that doesn't preclude that the streets could be joined in the future?
No.
By accepting the current
No.
plat? Okay,
No.
great.
Charlie?
Yeah, a couple of quick things to build on what was said about getting back and visiting the comp plan. I think when we had our discussions on Lincoln Avenue and the alignments and so on, somewhere buried in there was a discussion that to the east side of Lincoln, we would beef up the recreation conservation aspect, take advantage of the creek that runs through there and so on, and also to reflect on potential development of specialty and maybe boutique farms to the east side of Lincoln. So I don't want to lose track of that. That was in our discussions 3 years ago on this. The other thing is talk about a multi-use path along there. Is that on the west side or the east side of Lincoln Avenue extension?
It's going to be on the west side.
On the west side. Yeah, and that sort of concerns me because I view as, you know, we have trail opportunity on the east side. It strikes me that, you know, depending on how you develop it, you know, maybe there's a trail on the east side, and so you'd have a matching, you know, return trail of some kind on the west side. But we might want to keep that in mind as to, you know, if there's only going to be one, we may want it on the east side to take advantage of any conservation recreation that's developed on that east side. So I wanted to throw that out there. The other thing that's interesting, of course, is that I was on the council in 1991 when this first came out. This makes me feel very old. But it goes back to what I said about how North Lincoln Avenue is one of the areas of Urbana that we watched slow, steady industrial growth in, and it's why I and David, who used to sit next to me, were talking about how we needed to invest in Lincoln Avenue in the future. So, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
One quick question.
Robert?
In the saline that runs through here, is that a man-made drainage ditch? The one that's north of it, that's kind of meanders. It looks like the from the map, it looks like a bed of an old river. Is that true?
Yeah, to my knowledge, those are both natural drainage ways.
Didn't we have a gentleman
Originally.
come from the county once and talked about we didn't want to call them ditches anymore, something like
Yes,
that?
we did.
So we have to change our nomenclature? They
The
can't-
county refused to change it.
They could. Oh, well,
But you can try again.
you can try again.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Smythe and seconded by Roberts. Any more discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderpersons Bauer, Sox, Johnson,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Mayor Pressing.
Yes. That motion carries. Brandon?
I forgot to ask my question, Robert.
Sure.
One more question about this doesn't impact the vote, but do you know of the potential industrial user that will locate here? Do you have some rough sense of the number of jobs or the type of industry at this time?
I don't know a number of jobs, but we've had some discussions with this potential user. They would, if it's the same one that we've held discussions with, it would require a special use permit, so they would come before you. But I can say, I believe it would be a very good fit for Urbana. It's a business that would fit well here, and that is something the community really needs.
Yeah, great.
Dennis?
On a different topic, I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that Clyde Walker has arrived in the room, and I just wanted to let you know that we did approve your appointment to the Mayor's Safety Task Force, Clyde, and thank you for caring to come forward and participate in that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we have, did you want to say anything else, Robert, or just closing it down?
No.
Okay. We now have our discussion on the social service funding allocations. Kelly Murkowski is here to talk about that. Oh. Well, do you want to come up to the front, Carol and Bill?
You received in your packet a short memo with some information to help you in your discussion. Information I received from United Way, which also includes an email looking at how they review their applications, as well as also getting information from the Champaign County Mental Health Board and the Disabilities Board, and attached our public facilities application because there might be some information that would be helpful regarding the interagency collaboration and the public or the performance measurement information. And then the last item is information that was requested of us from the local funders group regarding priorities. And so I took all of the funding from the ones that were funded this year and put them into 5 different categories. So that way you can see where the funding went. So.
Okay, anybody have comments for Kelly? Dennis?
Yeah, maybe I'll just sort of start with some thoughts about it. Well, first of all, I appreciated Diane Marlin's chart, or I guess criteria council question list, which had been passed out to everybody last time. It kind of helps coordinate thinking about some of the questions and some of the concerns that the council has, as it evaluates these applications in future. And I there may be people who have, thoughts about that particular list and some of the topics that are added to it. The only one that I thought of was that in the one of the bottom squares, the topic under age groups served, starting with bullet point of birth to 5. It might be a thoughtful thing to include prenatal, which I don't know if that's a topic that is appropriate for that spot or not. But I mean, that's another concern. Prenatal care is one of the concerns that one might have to serve the community. And this is on your 2013 Consolidated Social Service Funding sheet, which was passed out. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullet points, starting with birth to 5 and ending with seniors 65 and over. And these are age groups served. And one of the things that might be indicated also is, is prenatal care.
Okay.
Birth to 5, I guess is. My other comment. I mean, I looked through. The other criteria that we might consider is weighing in or rating whether the focus of service is geared to the target areas, which in the Urbana area have statistically the most need, whether through through collection of data on our community relating to income, needs of police service, social issues that occur in the area, and adding a rating for that as well when we evaluate the funding allocations. It's not specifically spelled out here as one of the topics for consideration, but how it serves those areas in our community that have the most need might be one way of also evaluating a program that comes to us.
Okay. Anyone else? Charlie?
Yeah, to extend, maybe add a little bit slightly different meaning to what Dennis just said. You could think of it as a target neighborhood or target census tract approach, and so you could have a category, a scoring that took advantage of target neighborhood or target scoring, or target neighborhood or target census tract, where a need has been identified based on a neighborhood or some kind of delineation. I wouldn't say, you gave a particular example in your email, but I think it should be a little more generalized.
Kelly, do the agencies keep track of the people they serve in terms of census tracts? Or would we be adding something big to their task?
I don't think that they keep track of that right now, but I mean, there is a reporting form, at least for the agencies that we give community development block grant money to, and it lists how many are served in Urbana. I don't know if all agencies are aware of what all the census tracts are. I mean, but we could certainly, if that's something.
You probably wouldn't want, they don't want to release names, but maybe there could be, or addresses of individuals, but they could probably say how many people are in a certain neighborhood if we told them what we define a neighborhood as.
That might be a lot of work.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Dennis.
So maybe, as a part of that, it might be that if they realized that we were trying to address, give service to specific areas within the community, maybe, census tract, certain census tract areas, it could be that they would customize their service that they provide to address, those needed areas. And it could be that then their requests for service would specifically target them, which would be a nice way of helping them focus their attention, at least on the needs of Urbana citizens.
Diane.
This rating sheet that Dennis alluded to and Charlie actually revised last week was something that I put together a couple of years ago to help me and the council go through the applications that we were receiving at the time in their current format. And because of that, that very first question is how many Urbana residents are served, and the emphasis is on number of residents. Well, since then, we had, about a year ago, speaker here, Dr. Wynn Kaur from the U of I School of Social Work, Dean of the U of I School of Social Work, and she reminded us that another way to look at this is to think in terms of impact, an impact approach rather than a numbers approach, and with less emphasis on absolute numbers served, but more emphasis on what kind of overall impact is our expenditure having on people, and whether that's on 2 people or 200 people, you know, there's value probably in both. So her recommendation, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately, is that we should, another way to approach this is agree on some shared goals, and we can continue funding a whole lot of organizations with a relatively little amount of money, or we can figure out what our highest priorities are and target those areas and try that and see, and then we could actually see if that has any impact. And the reason that is resonating with me is yet again in Saturday's newspaper we had another headline, local teen charged with robbery and burglary, and here was a 17-year-old kid who wanted to buy a Valentine's gift for his girlfriend, and he needed money, and you would expect the normal thought process would be, I need money, I better go figure out a way to earn money. But instead, at some point in this child's life, his way of thinking turned from that to, I need money, I'm going to go home, get a gun, and go rob somebody to get money. And if we can have an impact on just one kid at some point in their life to keep them from going down that path, I think we can make a big impact on this community, because this current way of thinking of, I'm going to go get a gun and rob somebody so I can have money, or steal a stuffed animal from Walmart, is destroying our community. It's destroying this kid's life, really, and it's having a very negative impact. So I think another approach would be less emphasis on numbers served and more emphasis on, are we making a difference with the money that we're spending?
Could you refresh our memories? How did she measure impact?
Well, that wasn't specified, but there's a lot of different ways of measuring
Okay.
impact. But
Brandon?
that's the hard part.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I know it's kind of odd to have us here and you all there, but I think I would say that the council has to set its priorities, what it wants to fund, each cycle, really, because it's harder to measure the impact piece. We can do that in narrative form. We can do it in graph form to see how much of our money goes to what percentage of administration versus direct services, right? For instance, if we're giving Meals on Wheels, we can measure that quite easily. Say they gave out 3,000 meals, and the percentage of money that we give towards that effort can tell us what the impact is. But in other areas, it's a little harder to measure the impact more directly like that. In this case, I think in the numbers, we can certainly measure the impact on Urbana residents that enter into summer programs because of a subsidy. That's tangible. You can measure that. Some of the other programs may fit outside of your council goals, and so it's less likely to measure those, because sometimes that revenue may just go to help pay that staff member to do some other activity, not necessarily to do a direct service that you may want. And so I think the council has to say, we want to focus on, as Diane just pointed out in the article, we want to focus on teenagers' employment, right? Because we understand that if he's robbing people to buy a teddy bear, then clearly there's a greater issue of lack of opportunity or employment that might be a part of that scenario. But we don't know that for sure, because we don't have the resources that we have going to employment programs, summer employment, or job training programs. So we have to refocus priorities in order to get at what you really want. And I looked at I actually was familiar with this form because I've done it before. looking at the actual form, weighing them, it's a little more difficult to weigh based on this form, because what I may see as a priority, Brandon might not see as a priority, and I may measure that one higher over here than some other area. So it's just hard to measure it in that way. I think if we set ranks based on the priorities of the council, then you can rank them easier, and the things the council want to see happen in this fiscal year can kind of come to the top.
Heather?
Just to touch on two of those things, the jobs for teens, I think that we need to give employers incentives to employ teenagers, because when I was younger, they started employing kids at 16. My daughter's 16, and she has applied several places, and a lot of places now are waiting till they're 18 and asking for experience. Well, I wonder in 2 years how you're going to get experience if someone won't hire you. So I think there's something to be said about businesses here in Urbana giving them an incentive to employ teenagers, to employ 16-year-olds, not 18-year-olds, so that they can get, employment and have,
Some degree of experience.
just more experience than they would otherwise. And then when it comes to priority, Carol, I think it was Danielle Chenoweth came up with the idea where if it was the majority of council members agreed on a certain amount for each, like say 5 of us agreed on an agency to get 80%, then they got 80%. But if only 2 of us wanted to fund that agency, then that agency didn't get funded at all. So there was kind of a criteria there. I think when Danielle wasn't doing any more, we kind of dropped the ball on that. So maybe we need to revisit that when it comes to priorities.
Can I ask a question of staff?
Sure,
real quick?
go ahead.
Is there, when you have to report the usage of these funds, is there a criteria that the federal government sets for its applications, or is it general?
With regard to the Community Development Block Grant portion,
Correct.
Yeah, there is, but, because you have to make sure that, you follow the regulations. But with city funds, general funds in Cunningham Township, I don't think that there necessarily are. I think that would be, Cunningham Township has state regulations. I'm not sure what all those are, so.
Well, we could look at those and see if we should apply them.
Because there might be some alignment things that
Yeah,
we're not
right.
looking at.
Okay, who else? Was Brandon, you next?
Yeah, I, based on the form, had a couple areas that I wondered if, and maybe Diana's willing to do this, or maybe Charlie is willing to perhaps flesh out more. The first is that question of impact, and I kind of feel like at the top of the form, as we're asking people how many people are served, if we could get to impact by asking them, asking the applicant what their success metrics are, how they are going to measure their performance, and that might be number of meals served, that might be number of classroom hours of a training, that might be the number of people, but to ask them what their metrics are and for them to describe in narrative form, I think what the impact they have on those people they do serve would help us to see, okay, so here's 500 people who got a meal, here's 30 people who got a place to stay because they were homeless, and obviously at some point, we can't quantify those, but at least by having a description of the impact of each, we'll know.
Yeah.
Diane?
Well, in the United Way form on page 2 basically does that, where it, some of the criteria lists things like program identifies a well-defined measurable inputs, well-defined measurable outputs, one required metric. So I think we could do something. We could flesh it out using something like this.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, Dennis has his hand up for a while.
Yeah, I did. I was just going to say also that I really thought that as far as, maybe from the council person's point of view, looking at the United Way form, which they've created for their volunteers to fill out. And they're doing the ratings based on a rather interesting set of criteria under quite a few different points. And then they are allowed to give a 1 to 5 rating on that. That's it seems like a really direct and simple way for a person to kind of helps them. It's like a ladder to make the evaluations pretty simple. And if we all had a similar kind of tool to make our decisions based on each applicant, that it might really be a lot easier to go through these and to kind of evaluate, the strengths and weaknesses of each program. And the second thing I wanted to throw in is when I was, trying to work my way through college, one of my first jobs that I got during the summer was at a stamping plant, a small business in near my home, and I was an unskilled person, so they sent me to work doing odd jobs around the shop, and which included cleaning things up, and doing some sorting and unskilled work. But it gave me, I was able to earn enough money that summer to buy a car, which was totally an incredible and self-empowering experience. $600, right? So. That's not real recently, but that's a while ago. And but really, what I realized later was that this guy just liked the idea of helping someone, and he created a job he didn't really have to have specifically, but he let me work for him for the summer. It really enriched my life, and it wasn't really any skin off his back, and he was able to afford it. So there would be a wonderful way to try to build partnerships with businesses in our community to recreate really entry-level positions for community people to find this employment for the young people. And maybe what we should do is make this one of the chief goals of community development outreach, in the coming years. Maybe, it doesn't have to be all of that, but I mean, working with the business community. And maybe this would be through Rotary or through other kinds of city outreach forums to really try to create a bank of jobs, and say that maybe some of the funds from the community development services funding could go to supplement those employers or supplement those potential income fees. I don't know. Maybe that would be a great conversation to have, whether it's feasible.
They have their talk about matching the target issues of United Way. I think we should review United Way's target issues and see if we're lined up with that. We might learn something. We might revise ours. Diane?
I'm just thinking of how we can organize ourselves, and it occurred to me, we on the very last page of the packet, community development put together a spreadsheet which showed us our 5 key service areas, which actually correspond to that second block on the chart here. So we have our basic needs, which includes Time Center, Crisis Nursery, the food bank, etc. Children and youth, our past grants have been to things like CASA, Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Park District, Lead for Life. Health, mental health counseling, substance abuse. The fourth category was the senior programs targeted for seniors, and then the fifth is family support, emergency assistant, or some of those more unique type things. Those are the 5 key service areas that our funding has been grouped into in the past, and I think they're pretty reasonable. Maybe a way to approach this is, instead of use these as our 5 key service areas, by saying we want to spend 50% of our funding on children and youth this year, identify what our priorities are by saying what % of our funds we want to put into each of those categories, and then once we get the applications, we can go from there. But if we identify these as our categories and then say, here's where we want to put a certain percentage of our funds toward, that in itself identifies how we want to prioritize our expenditures this year.
Heather?
We have these 5 categories. Are we doubling areas, Kelly? Like, for example, if we get an application and we can look at the application and say, you know, that's not maybe our area of where we want to spend our money, but there is a place out there that hasn't applied for any funding, but they actually give funding. I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe there's something at a church that some of these agencies could lead their clients to that their clients don't know about. Because there's a lot of things out there. I mean, youth football is a good example. A lot of people don't know that there's a really vibrant youth football program in Champaign-Urbana. And so people that are interested, they find out through other areas. And so I think that we could almost be a lead to people that apply, that we say, oh, we don't have the money for you, but we know of a place that does. And so then that actually gives us more money to serve our top 5 priorities.
We're really not going to get any more money unless Champaign picks up some of the costs.
No, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm saying if,
But I know what you mean.
what I'm saying is that if we don't feel forced to approve their application, then that says, oh, well, we might have more money for something else if they know of a lead at a local church or some other place.
Did you
So
want to say-
I just think that we need to encourage places that offer social services, churches, whatever the case may be, you know, say, hey, talk to Kelly, let her, you know, let these agencies know, hey, these are available other places.
Do we have a list of everything that's available in Urbana? Or can we?
I know there is a list of funders. I believe United Way has put that out.
Okay, but if it's churches and everything like that, I wonder if there's one place you can look and find out all the different services that are available.
It's for the county. It's a county-wide that shows.
Okay.
So is it on the county
It's not
website?
spec-
Is there a county website that people can go to or even these agencies that could go to?
No, I don't think
Probably
there's a.
Family Services First Call for Help.
It's-
They're the
yes,
ones that have the
information.
whole list?
They have a directory. Family Services has First Call for Help. That would probably be pretty close to
There-
everything.
Yes, but the help book was put out by Family Service. It doesn't necessarily have like the different funding sources. I mean, it does list more of if you have this need, this is where you should go. Same with First Call for Help. It's the one that puts it out, the information and referral. I'm
Well-
pretty sure that United Way has they've put out several directories, and one it's maybe a little outdated, but there is a social service funding like directory of there's some churches that have small grants to the larger funders, contact information. So.
That would be good to know what
would-
is available in the
I think it
community.
would be. I think it'd
Yeah,
be a
that'd
really
be great.
helpful tool.
Right. Brandon?
I've got 2 more suggested changes here that I wanted to mention. One is on the form that Diane had put together, where near the bottom of the page we ask about age groups served. I realize that I think we need to broaden that maybe to populations served or target population, because we not only have groups that specifically serve by age, programs for seniors, programs for youth, but we fund a number of programs that are serving the homeless population or the HIV positive population or people with disabilities, these other populations in our community that aren't just an age group, but so I think somehow we need to broaden that to really capture what different group is being served by the program.
Well, yeah, actually, if I could address that, these are bullet points are just sort of given as examples, okay, and exactly that. You know, the idea here is that priority areas, low to high. The idea was to create target groups, and does it fit one of the target groups that we're after? And that's how you would work that scoring, and looking at the United Way form is another way of sort of incorporating some of that same kind of thinking. And at the end of the discussion, what I was going to propose, and I'll just stick it out there now, I think that once we collect all these ideas, if Diane's willing, Diane and I, since we put this together, could go with the other stuff that's been collected, sit down with Kelly and Janelle and maybe Libby and any others who, without violating the Open Meetings Act, of course, we could sit down and come up with a more integrated evaluation form. But at the same time, I think I'd like to hear the rest of your comments there. I've got some ideas on the two areas that we've already identified that aren't in here that we need to talk about.
Okay, who's next, Diane or Brandon?
Did you want to go ahead and finish?
Yeah, my last comment was one, and Kelly, correct me if this is on our application, but I think currently this is a question we don't ask, and that I know I consider when I'm making decisions, but it's never been something asked or never been on the form. And the question is, does the agency require participants receiving the service to participate in any mandatory religious activity or religious program? And that's important to me because I've had times when I'm trying to refer people to social service agencies where if their religious beliefs are different than the particular belief of the agency, and the agency is going to require them to go to a daily church service or something that's different than their belief, that all of a sudden it's incompatible. And even though they want to be a homeless shelter, I can't refer people there to them as a homeless shelter when the population I'm trying to refer has a different belief. So that's something I've taken into account, and I know in the past we've funded a lot of programs that might be affiliated with a religious organization but don't necessarily require a religious participation to receive the benefit. But I wonder, Kelly, is that a question we've ever had on our form so that we really know that? I'm just going off of what I know in the community when I make those decisions, but it would be nice to know, and for us to know as a matter of policy, are we willing to fund organizations that require a religious practice?
I think that we can't do that, right? Because we've always been very careful that if an organization offers a service, it has to be offered to everybody.
Right. I know there is not any question like that that's on the application, if there's a requirement. I know if I believe if somebody contacts us or they apply or have questions, and we do a training on the application as well, we let them know that they have to serve everybody. And some of the social service agencies that are religious component, they may have a separate entity that they have to do, like Salvation Army, for example.
Right.
Everybody. There's no requirement regarding attending their services.
Okay, so it's kind of already clear in our criteria that at least for the programs you're asking for our funding for, they have to be kind of have an open door policy that people can make use of the service. Okay, thanks.
Diane.
Just for your information, last year we directed 40% of the total social service funding to the basic needs category, 22% to children and youth, 19% to health, mental health, counseling, and substance abuse, 12% to seniors, and 7% to family support. So we might want to think about shifting those percentages.
Could you send that out?
Sure.
Yes, we could all get the written
40,
numbers.
22, 19, 12, and 7. And I've heard over and over again of great interest in focusing on early childhood, on youth employment, on after-school, summer school programs. I mean, I'm getting a sense that people would like to focus on children and youth this year, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach year by year.
Robert Lewis.
I think maybe we can look at the categories, but I think specifically, one thing we should try to do is limit the categories if we could, as far as the ones we can serve. I think that would be a good thing to try and do. I know we've got, 5 to deal with right now. One thing you might want to think about is if in 1 year you decide you want to deal with prenatal, a higher percentage would go to that or whatever, then the next year you would change your criteria and move to a different category so that you can make your dollars work well for what you have to serve. You only got 313,000. But to make any kind of impact, you're going to jack up the dollars if you let's say think about it not over a year's period, let's say over a 5-year period of funding, okay? And think about reducing the categories as a possibility. That's just food for thought.
Okay, Carol?
Can Bill go first?
Bill can go first. I couldn't
Um,
see who had their hand up first.
Yeah, I'm subtle. You guys probably, you've done this several years, so the mechanism is something that I'm not as familiar with, but I did, a few things kind of popped out to me strategically when I was looking through this. One was asking about the United Way target issues, and if we have target issues or goals that we can specify. And then a couple other things were in both of the county, the Mental Health Board and the Developmental Disability Board, they mentioned gaps in core services related to state of Illinois budget cuts, which is probably something that will be more so going forward, and federal budget cuts too. And I guess one of the things that this funding allows us to do that maybe the ordinary citizen can't do with their donations is to kind of look at the excess capacity in some of these programs that are being cut, and if we think it's a good program, to fill in that with city money instead of like just donation money that a private citizen could do. So that kind of looking at the amount, $300,000, it's a lot of money that you can do a lot of good with if it's targeted. But I think if it's spread out, I'm sure that in our area there's probably $30 or $40 million easily spent on these kind of services. So if you spread it out, you can make a 1% impact. But if you focus it, maybe you can have a little bit more impact than 1%.
Well, I think you need to know what our money leverage is. That would be a question. We don't really have that on the form, do we?
Not on the social service one. No, there's
Because
not.
that if you can give an agency, $10,000 and they can get $100,000, that would be something that you'd want to consider too.
We asked that. It's in the third box.
It's in the third box?
Yes.
It is,
Yeah,
I think
okay.
we do ask it on the
Yeah, okay. But have we done that so far?
No.
But that's a good idea. I like
It
that.
used to be on, I think it used to be on the application. Somewhere along the line it got
isn't it?
dropped. I thought it is on, isn't it on the current application?
I don't think that's specifically regarding leveraging, but the one here about the administration versus programming, that is on here.
No, but the idea that is it used to get matching funds? I thought that
That was
question.
on there.
I thought that.
Well,
question-
we should check and see if it is.
I can certainly check.
Okay. All right. Then Carol would like to say something.
I just have one final thought that came out when we looked at the packet. In the categories, the 5 categories, for instance, if an agency has a tax base already, why would we fund them through city funds?
We don't.
I don't
So,
think we do. We're just
I'm
doing
looking at-
social service agencies.
I guess I'm looking at, all I see here is the Urbana Park District, for instance, who has a tax
Okay,
base.
yeah. That'd probably be the only one.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, and, well, developmental services they have a program that's outside of their own funding stream too, that they, sometimes there are programs that they may have a separate funding stream from taxes and stuff, but they have other programs they're trying to develop and so on, so.
Okay,
And there
the-
was something about the Park District.
Yeah, the Park District was to give to the children because the Park District charges for programs.
For waivers or subsidies. or
Yeah,
something like
right.
that.
That was what so it's really not directly to the Park District.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else? Okay.
Did you want to say something?
No?
Okay, so here's where, in addition to sitting down and trying to flesh this out a little more, taking into account everything that's been put together here, which I'm willing to do since I've started in on it with Diane's help, if Diane's willing to help and keep pushing me along. Yeah, she's, okay. There are a couple of things that we need a little more info on before we can go forward. We need to know what it would take for us to participate with Champaign in their summer youth job program. There's a program that already exists. We have to find businesses and money to do that. And if so, what do we do to join that program? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so that's a piece of information we need to get. The other piece of information we need to get is related to the pre-K stuff. If we want to get, there are 400 plus, was it 400, 450? What's the number? 400. We have 400 kids on the waiting list in the county for Head Start, for example. How many of those are Urbana? What can we do to address that need?
I think it's 50 in Urbana.
Is it 50 in Urbana?
Yeah, that would be, the way I was thinking of it was for things that are just purely in Urbana, that we should fund that. And Champaign should fund whatever they want in Champaign. But for the ones that serve people in both communities, there's really no way that you can divide it up unless both communities contribute. So we were going to hear from Champaign. Did you get anything from them yet?
We have not got the memo, but there's a memo that they put together
Okay.
regarding all
So
their
we can
their
talk to
funding.
them and see
Yeah.
what they want to do, but we'll come up with
Mhm.
something probably.
And then my last, I was going to ask, we have some other people in the audience. I don't know if others have something to add to this discussion. I know that Lene Clark is in the back here. She's with the Comptroller's office and with the Junior League. Junior League is a potential partner in some stuff that, and she's met Janelle and no, Kelly. Who is it? Kelly, I guess. Yeah. So there's some interaction there. So I guess there's a third piece here, which is what other partnerships out there
Sure.
are there that we can go after. So I should add partnerships here. So that's another piece we need to bring here. Looking at the schedule, we were shooting for a March 3rd display ad for the News Gazette. That's going to be pretty tight.
What do you want in the display ad?
Something that would say, no new applicants. So that,
Oh, you
because
do
we
have-
are getting a lot of phone calls and.
Well, can't we just, I see. what
So
you
we
mean.
should, I mean.
I
if
thought we were
that's-
going to save the money on the ad, but we can't do that?
We feel that a little, at least a small one would
Okay.
be, yes,
Okay.
would be good.
Okay.
Now, what?
We can change the schedule, if we need to, we could push back a week or two. And then we'd
Okay.
still be able to stay overall on schedule.
Charlie?
One thing that came out last week was the idea that we would only fund the agencies that we're currently funding, and ask them to provide us with new budgets. Was that the sort of, with?
I think that was part of
Yeah,
the discussion.
that was part of it, that we would only, plus we would look at new agencies or partnerships that met the targets of the pre-K and the summer jobs, was the other piece of that. So, that's that's where I'm personally at in my thinking, is that I would like to be there. We'll fund these agencies that we've got on here. We'll be doing some evaluations of those agencies in the next year, based on these new criteria. I don't think we can get that completely figured out in time to do complete evaluations. Maybe we can, but that we really want to target pre-K and summer jobs via partnerships and maybe even some new money. We may have to come up with some new money, particularly for the summer jobs piece. But that's where I'm at.
I had, starting out with a list of what is available in Champaign County and what is the money, what money is used for leverage, so we understand that, a dollar here is going to create more there than someplace else. And then your point about can we join the City of Champaign Youth Services, or what can we learn from what they did, and what other partnerships, and then if we're going to have new money, that might be a problem. So again, I think the best way is to see if Champaign can pick up some of the joint stuff, and that frees up money for us to use on Urbana-only things.
Question.
Yes, Robert Lewis.
Would we want to set our priorities first, though? Then reassess the ones we already have? I think that's
Sure.
the best approach, because there's some of the agencies that we probably already fund would not match up with our priorities. Do you
Well,
agree with that?
We could, yeah, we might
Well,
put up a
you know-
list of priorities and then see what we're funding and change our list.
It might change the whole complexion of the thing if.
Yeah.
if-
the reevaluation of what we're currently funding.
Right.
So I think first step is priorities.
Okay,
Next step
so
is
do you want to do
evaluation.
this again next week? You have time to pull some of this together for next week, or
Yeah.
will it take longer than that?
I'll try. How's
Okay,
that?
we'll see what we
But
can
should
do.
be able to, I should be able to get this.
I don't know yet. It's a committee meeting, so I think we do have time for that. Yeah. I mean, this is something that's going to be a series of small discussions before we can get a big picture, I think.
I should be able to get this
Yeah,
information.
Dennis?
And anything that can help streamline the application itself so that the material is very clear and the questions that we ask are very directed, that would make it easier for them to fill out, and it would be easier for us to read through and evaluate. There might be sections that we don't have to ask, or we may find that we can simplify somehow and make it, I don't know, simpler English or something. You know, all the forms are always like about 4 or 5 pages long and it's a lot of reading to do when you would make these evaluations. And since we're probably not going to be having verbal presentations, I guess that's another question, whether if we are changing our format so much, do we, want to invite these people to make, 3 to 4 minute presentations again, because that will take, 2 weeks to go through those.
Mayor Pressing, just
Yes.
one question. Mr. Lewis pointed out that, of course, setting the priorities first would be the most logical way to proceed. But once you set the priorities, and some of those agencies you may have funded in the past may not actually fall into that priority category, then you might be able to open up the process for new partnerships to emerge based on your priorities. So to post that you won't take any new applications, yet your priorities have changed, you might not get to your priorities.
We know what we should do is review what we're funding now as we set the priorities. Because if you're just setting priorities in the abstract, you could easily miss something.
Sure. Agreed.
Diane?
Well, to get us towards setting priorities, would it be helpful for each of us individually to, between now and next week, to look at these 5 categories and think of it as a pie, and what percentage of the pie do you want to put, what money do you want to put in each of these 5 categories, and then see where we are?
It's a logical step, yes.
Sure. Charlie?
So Diane, I'm looking at my calendar, and I could spend as much time as you want on Friday on this, but not before then.
We'll talk afterwards. We can
Okay, but leading up to that is if people can provide me feedback on that question between now and Friday morning, I'd appreciate it, because the idea being that I could spend a lot of time on Friday working on this. If I can find some staff to help me.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you all for participating.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
I think we're at the end, right? There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.